So I'm getting questions about this potential buildup of Russian troops near Kyiv. Apparently, there's been Russian fighter jets flying over Belarus. And I just want to bring some of those thought processes back to reality because there is concern there. People don't want another offensive from Russia, and they definitely don't want it to succeed. The fact of the matter is, in warfare, there is offensives, counteroffensives, setting up defensive positions, etc. So to think that Russia wouldn't conduct an offensive at some point is to be somewhat naive. I do believe eventually they will try to conduct offensive operations, kind of like they're doing in Bakhmut, but it likely won't be very effective. And here's why. First and foremost, I don't think necessarily that there is a buildup of troops. I think Ukraine has said this because obviously they need to keep focus on the war for them to continue to receive equipment from the United States and Europe and other partners. So they need to say things that potentially would get us going and involved, at least thinking about it, keeping it on the forefront. The United States has come forward and said they don't see a buildup of troops taking place as of right now, only the train up of conscripts. Now, I trust the U.S. in this scenario because the U.S. has largely been right this whole time. If you go back to January, it was the U.S. and not even Ukraine that was saying, hey, Russia's going to build up and attack you. We have credible intelligence. We have intelligence in the Kremlin. The United States has the money, the resources, the wherewithal to infiltrate pretty much everywhere they want to. So the U.S. knew this war was going to take place and was telling everyone this, and the countries were saying it's not going to happen, and here we are. So the U.S. intelligence apparatus is quite capable, and that same apparatus right now is saying they don't see a buildup. They don't see a potential for an attack into Kyiv, and I agree with that. Even if there was a buildup, I would say it might be just somewhat of a feint to try and pull Ukrainian troops away from the front line back to Kyiv. I don't know if this is necessary, though. I think Kyiv is adequately defended. When initially Russia rolled in February to take Kyiv, they were somewhat successful getting close but not taking the entire city. That was a surprise to Ukraine, despite the United States saying it was going to happen. So it wouldn't be a surprise this time. Everyone on Earth would be able to see the buildup, would be able to see what Russia's building up with. And this time, Kyiv is already fortified. They already have trained troops in place. They have defensive positions in place. They have anti-aircraft in place. They have everything in place to defend the city. So any type of push by Russia towards Kyiv would be flat out catastrophic for Russia. They would not be able to do it. And that's why I just don't think they are doing this. Their conscription, the Russian call-up of military-age males has been a clusterfuck. And they are struggling to supply the troops on the front line they have right now, even with winter gear. There's been videos of soldiers getting frostbite on the Russian side. There's been videos of the muddy trenches without any way of draining them because they seem to have forgot how to just do basic trench warfare, and never mind the morale and leadership undermining that is taking place. There was a video that came out a few weeks ago of a flat-out mutiny on the front lines from Russian troops. And if they think that trying to throw troops that were trained in like a month against war-hardened, battle-hardened Ukrainian troops with Western equipment, Western intelligence, Western, what we call ISR or surveillance capability, they're going to have a bad time. And that's why I just don't think this is something that is based in reality. I think Ukraine is saying it just like they say a lot of things to try and keep the focus. Now, I'm not saying that there wouldn't potentially eventually be a push towards Kyiv to try and take them, but I really don't see Belarus having the stomach to come in at this point. The Belarusian people continue to just slowly chip away at the support for what Russia's doing. It just really is coming down to anyone who Lukashenko can influence in Belarus is still supporting it. But there's Belarusian fighters fighting on the Ukrainian side at this point. So do I see eventually Russia finding a way to consolidate, potentially using their mass amount of conscripts to try and push an offensive and retake some ground? Yes, that's the nature of warfare. The Ukrainians have done an incredible job that we will study for decades on retaking the terrain Russia took, who is on paper we thought the far superior power. But Ukraine has had to stop to reconsolidate themselves. In the nature of warfare, what will eventually happen is Russia will conduct an offensive and maybe gain some ground. They'll have to reconsolidate, then Ukraine will continue the chess battle. And that's what I see. I don't see this imminent threat where Kyiv is going to be attacked. I don't see this imminent threat where we're going to see any kind of tanks rolling down the road from Belarus or from Russia in that region. What I see is continued rocket attacks, continued missile attacks on infrastructure. And personally, I think that's a waste of their resources. They're trying to terrorize the Ukrainians into submission rather than using them effectively on the front lines, whereas Ukraine is using its weaponry to attack Russian troops and attrit the Russians on the front line. That's the battle tactic that will win this war. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I just don't think that Russia is going to be moving into Kyiv with 200 or 300,000 troops anytime soon. And Ben Hodges, the general who was my general officer, he was the commander in Europe when I was there, he agrees with me and he talks about this as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've heard some news that Ukraine may be gearing up for another fight, but that's very hush-hush. And even if I knew anything about it, I would kind of keep it on a down low. So that's where I'm at right now on that. So we'll see where it goes from here.